Hey. Thank you so much, Mr. David, to joining me on the Sami Parvez show, sir. It is good to have you again on this week as you are committed to appearing here on weekly now.
Yeah, well, it's nice to be back, Sammy. Always a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, we have lots of things to discuss, particularly Trudeau broke the parliament and also liberal leadership. But let's jump in first on Freedom Convoy. One of the organizer was sentenced for I think the Crown prosecution asked for 10 years for sentence. So could you please elaborate what happened there?
Okay, I was just looking to see if the verdict or the sentencing had been released. I don't think it has yet. I haven't seen it.
No,
Uh,
I think Crown asked for 10 years
y-
sentencing.
yeah, the Crown is asking for 10 years, which is outrageous.
Hmm.
He should not have even this should not have even come to trial. I don't understand. Really, it's mind-boggling because this guy is looking at 10 years behind bars for participating in a protest. And yet we've got people all across Ottawa for the last 12
Over.
months or more
Hmm.
occupying buildings. I mean, we had some of the anti-Israeli protesters were occupying buildings on Parliament Hill and they just walked away. They weren't even arrested. So this is a horrible double standard. And I'm not saying it in any way that people shouldn't oppose the war in Gaza or shouldn't have the right to oppose what Israel's doing.
Hmm.
But when you're occupying buildings and there's no consequences, certainly nobody's even being arrested, and nobody is on at trial and facing 10 years. I don't understand what's happened to my country when I see this. I really don't. This Pat King is a political prisoner, if you will. The last time uh, I talked to people who knew Pat King, I don't know Pat King very well. I know a lot of people who know Pat King. Let's put it that way. And they said he still hadn't had his bank account unfrozen after months and months, and he's getting by, essentially on charitable donations at times. And I just find this outrageous what he's had to go through. And whether or not you agree with everything Pat King ever said or not,
Hmm.
to me, that's not the issue anymore. This is a man who has suffered incredible wrong for simply being part of a peaceful protest. And I hope this has no bearing on the verdict that's yet to come in March. I think it's March 12th, the verdict for Tamara Leach and Chris Barber, who have gone through lawfare for the past, well, how long has it been? 18 months
18
now.
months. Yep.
18 months since their trial started. They're still waiting for a verdict. And I hope the Pat King verdict and the sentencing doesn't have an impact on their trial because these are two people, again, who should never be in court for what they did. This should never have come to this because they're not even doing what other people in Ottawa and across Canada have been doing, and they're politically protected, clearly. These other people who have done things that are against the law,
Hmm.
clearly against the law, but they're not being prosecuted. They're not even being arrested. So this is a horrible double standard. I'm totally with Pat King on this. I don't think he should receive anything except maybe probation.
Hmm.
If they have to give him something, and they're going to give him something, they found him guilty. But I hope he just gets the bare minimum because he doesn't deserve it. And it really upsets me that it's come to this. So
Yeah, it is extremely shocking. I was reading yesterday about this one. I was shocked, like how come a person just protested, used his rights. Maybe they went little bit extreme, but it was not like you are sentenced for lifetime sentence. Like where we can see like other criminals are walking free on the streets, even though some were involved in ISIS with Islamic State terrorism. Like nothing happened. And then we also see like in Calgary or in Brampton on these area where Khalistani protester openly protesting and in blocking the roads, and particularly with Gaza protesters who are protesting against Israel, as you mentioned, like they are occupying building, but no charges. Like it means no charges against them, but particularly they are just targeting these one. It seems like it is a political move. If you don't mind, can I please ask you, like, as you also served in Canadian military, and you are working as a journalist for a long time. What's your analysis? Do you think, like, Canada, what's happening right now, particularly this Freedom Convoy trial? Do you believe Canada is a democratic state?
I think it's dangerously near becoming an authoritarian state. And that all depends what happens in the next couple of months. If we are allowed to have an election, I think we will avoid becoming a minor dictatorship or a mild dictatorship, if you will. If the liberals continue to hold on to power by any means possible, and whether that means proroguing again or delaying the election until next year, that is not democratic and that's not a democracy. And clearly, you have a government that persecutes and prosecutes its political foes. That's the mark of a dictatorship.
Mm-hmm.
And as you mentioned, the Calistanis, for instance, there's not a lot of Calistanis going to jail for 10 years
Yep.
for brandishing their daggers at public protests. That to me is menacing. That is violent, or potentially violent. But yet the Calistanis are a vital component of the Liberal Party. They're very much part of the Liberal Party organization. And incidentally, they have all gone over to Mark Carney's
Mm-hmm.
campaign. That's where the Calistanis are now.
Yep.
So that does not give me a warm feeling, if I had any at all, and I didn't. But that doesn't enhance my view of Mark Carney at all, because these are the same Calistanis that Justin Trudeau has protected and has nurtured because they're vital political allies of his, and that's part of the reason Justin Trudeau went to war. Technically, not
Mm-hmm.
not exactly, but metaphorically, he has done everything he can to anger, incite India because he knows it excites the Khalistani component of the Liberal Party. And that's the only reason he's done that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, you are absolutely, sir, right. Like, we are just I don't know, like, where this country is going, like, it seems like we are going on the wrong direction. We need new leadership to make things better for Canada and Canadian. As you were, like, talking about earlier this morning on your podcast, you were discussing about like how Mark Carney announced his leadership, and I also saw a video on the X. Maybe you also saw, like, one of journalist from Western Standard was not allowed to attend Carney leadership race. Like, he was announcing, and I think he did not pick any question. But it seems like, as you mentioned, a good point, that most of the people were standing beside Carney, all were non-white. Like, it seems like he showed that, yeah, we care about this diversity or equity, inclusion. It seems like everything is happening what Trudeau did in the last 9 years. So do you see any changes, like, in terms of what Trudeau did and now what Carney is going to do, and how do you analyze that is leadership announcement?
Well, I thought it was, as I said this morning, I thought it was just silly that he goes to Edmonton and pretends that he's suddenly from Edmonton, as if he's had anything to do with Edmonton in his whole career. Now, he might have been there as a kid, and apparently he was born in the Northwest Territories. I didn't know this. He doesn't advertise that. Now he is, but he's never advertised that. This is a guy who is completely bound up to Bay Street in Toronto, to the Ottawa establishment, and to the World Economic Forum establishment. He is a globalist. And he is the citizen of three countries. People don't know this. He's a citizen of the UK, Ireland, and Canada. And he's described himself in the past as a European.
Mm-hmm.
He's been out of Canada so long. He's been the goodwill ambassador for the United Nations on climate change for the last 3 years. This is a man who I can't take him seriously when he says suddenly he's a Westerner, he's from Edmonton, and he's not even attached to the Liberal Party. He's an outsider, an outsider. He's been working for the Liberal Party directly for the last 5 6 months since September. He's been the chief economic advisor to the Liberal Party. He has close connections to Justin Trudeau and Chrystia Freeland. He has been working with this Liberal government for the last 9 years. Now, maybe he hasn't been a member of parliament with this government, but he's been an inside advocate of this government. He's been an acolyte of this government. He's been an advisor to this government, and he remains an advisor. If you look on the Liberal Party website, Mark Carney is still there. They couldn't even bother to take his name down as he campaigns to be the leader of the party. He's still the chief economic advisor to the party. This is how cynical the Liberals are. They really think Canadians are that stupid that they're going to look at this guy and say, hey, he's a newcomer. He's an outsider. And not only that, he represents change.
Mm-hmm.
If you listen to his speech yesterday, there wasn't a whole lot of change there. There was a lot of dollars, but not a lot of change. And he was talking about the same things Justin Trudeau loves to talk about, the climate change crisis. Couldn't wait. 2 minutes into his speech, climate change. Oh, and of course, did you know he arrived at this leadership announcement in a
Yeah.
huge limo, a
Yeah.
stretch limo?
Yeah.
I mean, Justin Trudeau goes around in an SUV, a giant-sized SUV, a convoy of SUVs. Mark Carney goes one better. He arrives in a stretched limo. That's how concerned Mark Carney is about climate change. Everybody else's problem, not his. And he's the one that preaches. This is the hypocrisy of all of these climate change people, though. They fly around the world in their private jets, eating up the carbon, and it's not their problem. They can do it because they're the special class who are there, the anointed class who are there to tell us all how to live. But the rules don't apply to these people, just like they didn't apply during COVID. These are the same people who just completely ignored the rules they put in place for everybody else because they knew they were nonsense. And they knew that they were there not for health reasons, but for authoritarian control reasons. And Mark Carney is just part and parcel with all of that horrible liberal mindset and the same cynicism that I'm going to buy that he's some kind of outsider, that he represents change. That was the worst speech I've ever heard anybody. And I've been watching politicians for 30 years since I was a kid, actually. I've been watching politicians in leadership races all of my adult life. And I've never heard a worse speech than that yesterday from anybody, liberal, conservative, NDP, Republican, or Democrat in the States. This is a guy who just essentially barely got through a 15-minute speech that was about nothing. This man is the Seinfeld of Canadian politics. His speech and his candidacy is about nothing except the continuation of the Liberal Party under Justin Trudeau, the Justin Trudeau approach to politics. And I couldn't believe anybody could stand there and applaud. And like I say, it's like somebody had applause signs to tell people when to clap and cheer because his speech was horrible. And he couldn't even tell you why he wanted to be leader because he says, I understand the economy. He says, I saved two economies. Really? You think you saved the Canadian economy under Stephen Harper? No, you didn't. Stephen Harper, unfortunately, appointed him as the governor of the Bank of Canada. It was Stephen Harper who did that. He didn't save any economy. There was no economy to save at that time. The economy was doing fine. He didn't save the economy in England when he became the governor of the Bank of England. He didn't save the economy over there either. There was nothing to save. But here is a guy who really has such a high opinion of himself. And he says, I'm going to make the economy work for you. How? You're doing this, you're going to institute the same policies as Justin Trudeau. The economy hasn't worked for me for 9.5 years. Why is it suddenly going to work for me because the leader of the Liberal Party changes and we have a new prime minister? This guy, as I say, he's like Justin Trudeau on Valium. He can't get passionate about anything he's talking about. He just expects you to say, "Boy, God, we're so fortunate, so blessed to have a man of this intelligence and this dedication to put his life and on the line like this for the country." He just wants to serve Canada so badly. I'm not buying any of this, and I hope most Canadians are going to see through this charade. This guy is really from hell. I can't. I just can't abide it. If I would rather see Chrystia Freeland win because at least she was there on the ground for the last
Mm.
9 years,
Yep.
doing a horrible job, mind you, but at
Mm.
least she was there, not hiding in the World Economic Forum and not hiding in Europe and suddenly coming back to Canada and saying, "I'm here to save the world. I'm here to save Canada." I have very little time for Mark Carney. I have less time after watching him yesterday, because I have to say, I've seen interviews with Mark Carney, and they're enough to put you to sleep. But his speech yesterday was absolutely appallingly boring.
Mhm.
And as I've said many times, it
Yeah.
was like a ride home on the subway. That was that inspirational. There was just nothing to see. There was nothing to do except watch a guy tell you he's so wonderful, and can't you see that? Because if you can't see that, well, there's something wrong with you, not Mark Carney. So I think he's probably the guy the Liberal Party wants. Establishment wants Mark Carney. We're down to three people, basically. I mean, we got an MP from Ottawa. Nobody even knows who he is. We've
Mhm.
got this supposed billionaire businessman that I can't remember his name. He
Mm.
suddenly comes out of the woodwork. He hasn't got a hope in hell, of course, of even getting on past the first ballot if they have a first ballot. But we've got Mark Carney, Chrystia Freeland, and I think we're still going to have Karina Gould, who has got all kinds of baggage. Nobody really takes Karina Gould too seriously, so it's really between two people, Chrystia Freeland and Mark Carney. The party wants Mark Carney because he's the globalist, he's the WEF guy. Justin Trudeau has almost anointed him because we know now these two had a secret meeting, that the prime minister's office released pictures of this yesterday to Brian Lilly of the Toronto Sun, who
Mhm.
shared them on X.
Yep.
I put them on my broadcast this morning, and they're pictures taken of Mark Carney and Pierre and sorry, Justin Trudeau having a secret meeting where they're obviously sealing a deal. They're securing some sort of pact. And I don't know exactly what it was. I think it was Justin Trudeau telling Mark Carney, "Yeah, you're gonna be the next leader." And maybe Mark Carney saying, "You can replace me at the UN."
Mhm.
Justin Trudeau is up to something. He's
Yep.
far too happy for a guy who's going out the door in disgrace as a prime minister that nobody wants anymore. Smiling way too much, far too chipper. He's up to something, and I think that up to something has something to do with Mark Carney.
Yeah, you are, sir, absolutely right. And also, like, we are seeing, like, former New York mayor also endorsed him, Mike Bloomberg. And like he is he holds three citizenship, but no one is talking about it. Remember, like, back in 2018 or 19, when Andrew Scheer was the leader of Conservative Party, and during election campaign it became a huge issue for media, particularly mainstream media, but no one is now talking what you are saying. So this should be a great concern for everyone, like, how the hell would you be more loyal to Canada than anyone else.
Well, only Mark Carney can have three citizenships. I mean, two you might understand, but three? I
Yeah.
mean, and yet he's not even talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's no big deal. It's like you're right. Andrew Scheer was just raked over the coals because he had dual citizenship with the United States, which is not that uncommon if you live in Canada,
Mm-hmm.
because the interaction between these two countries is so obvious, and it's so blatant. But not so much so with the UK and Ireland. And it it strikes me as very odd that this has not even been mentioned because with Andrew Scheer basically had to say, yes, I'll renounce my American citizenship if I win.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I think he was on the road to doing that just during the election. But it, incredible what this guy's already getting away with. But it's interesting as well. His leadership announcement did not go over well with anybody. I'm not seeing any mainstream media say, "Wow, what a day that was."
Mm-hmm.
They're all saying, "What a letdown." Even a Toronto Star, liberal bastion, is saying that he really didn't look that impressive yesterday. And of course, the French is a problem with him as well.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who knows French just a little bit knows the games you can play to look like you can speak French, but you really can't. And this was Mark Carney's way of doing it. The occasional phrase would pop into his sentence, but as people have pointed out, I don't think he could debate Pierre Poilievre in French. Maybe even not even Jagmeet Singh, but he could not effectively debate in French. It's quite obvious his French is weak. Now that's not a big deal to me, but it's a big deal to the Liberal Party.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big deal to the Liberal Party. So I think he's going to have to do something about that too. But there's no time, right now
Mm-hmm.
because this is supposed to be over by March the 9th. I still find it hard to believe.
Mm-hmm.
But if it is, he's going to be and if they vote this government down as they should in late March, he's going to be one of the shortest serving prime ministers in history.
Mm-hmm.
Probably even shorter than, I'm trying to think,
King,
John
yeah.
Turner was
Mm-hmm.
73 days. Because I was just looking up John Turner the other day. Because John Turner, like uh, Mark Carney, sought the liberal leadership without a seat in the House of Commons. Because that's the reason I was looking up John Turner. Because I was thinking, who is the last liberal to be elected not only as leader of the party but as prime minister? John Turner replaced Pierre Trudeau as
Mm-hmm.
as
Yeah.
as, as prime minister. He did not have a seat in the House of Commons in 1984 when he won that leadership race.
Mm-hmm.
He had to get a seat. I think it was in Vancouver. He got he won a quickie by election in Vancouver Quadra, and finally got a seat in the House of Commons just before, just like literally a week or two before the general election, and he got decimated by Brian Mulroney. It was the largest majority in history up to that point, and he was complete. He was buried. The Liberal Party was buried in 1984 by Brian Mulroney and the Progressive Conservatives.
Mm-hmm.
He was prime minister for I think 73 days in total.
Wow.
Now Mark Carney might be prime minister for about 35 days in total if things go as they should. So my question, Sammy, to you, why is he doing this? Why is a guy, yeah, he's relatively intelligent. There's no question about that. He's no
Mm-hmm.
fool.
Yep.
So why is he saying he wants to be prime minister for 35 days or less, unless he knows something you and I don't know? I find this very interesting because every poll,
Yeah.
even if they change leaders, says the Liberal Party is headed for extinction in the
Mm-hmm.
next general election. Like less than 10 seats, could be 5 seats.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to lose seats in Toronto, in Montreal, in Vancouver, in Edmonton. They're going to lose seats everywhere across the country. They're going to be decimated in Quebec. So why does he want to lead this party? Why does he want to be prime minister for what, 30 days? Just so he can say Mark Carney's in the history books?
Yeah, yeah, that is what I'm thinking. Yeah, because this is the golden opportunity for anyone to become the leader of the Liberal Party, then automatically qualified for prime minister. Like it won't happen in near future. Like we don't know. Like maybe after 1 decade or 2 decade. Like this could be the point. And as you said, Mark Carney is holds like three citizenship, and also is French is very weak. If your French is very weak, so there are very few chances to become the prime minister. Like this could be another issue.
Well, I suppose that might be all. I hope the issue isn't that they have a plan to stay in government until 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I talked to a constitutional lawyer this week on my show about that very issue. He said it's very, very unlikely that the Liberal government can extend their rule into 2016 without repealing legislation. Although he admitted the Constitution still says a government can stay in power for 5 years. So it's like there's the Constitution versus the legislation.
Hmm.
So I think that's still a question mark in terms of, can this guy stick around by using various means? Can he? People are suggesting. I did a radio interview yesterday morning, and the guy suggested to me, well, what if he makes Jagmeet Singh his deputy prime minister?
Hmm.
What if he says the NDP will be a part of a formal coalition, not just a sort of a partner, but what if he makes Jagmeet Singh his deputy prime minister, and Jagmeet Singh agrees to keep these liberals in power? And I said, well, I think that would mean the end of the NDP as a party. I think that would be, they would lose a lot of their support overnight. It would evaporate, and I
Hmm.
think he would have a caucus revolt on his hands.
Yep.
But it's a possibility. It really is a possibility. And as I said, it's a question mark in terms of whether or not this government can stay in power for another year and a half. It's
Hmm.
it's not likely, but it's not impossible. So maybe Mark Carney's thinking about that. I don't know. He's a devious man. There's no question. He is a all about power politics, and he understands the globalist agenda very well. He's been preaching it, he's been teaching it, he's been propagating it for many years. I find him extremely dangerous, even though he appears to be innocuous. He appears to be so boring, that is so incredibly difficult to listen to, that he really can't have a hidden agenda. Well, I think it's very possible he does, but I hope it's all about just being prime minister for a month,
Hmm.
and
Yep.
so he can say he can tell us, he can tell everybody, I'm in the history books now. I was the prime minister.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I agree with you, sir. So you were talking, like, I know, like, you said like 2016, you mean like 2026. Just for clarify the confusion.
Oh yeah, yeah. Sorry, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, it's okay. And also, like, you okay, so I'm going to ask you about the lawyer later, but I have a question as you brought up, like, it was in my mind. Like, but so far, Jagmeet Singh did not say anything about forming a coalition with Mark Carney, right?
No, no. He has his last word was he will vote non-confidence at the next available opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
We have him on tape saying that, but Jagmeet Singh's word is not very good. Jagmeet Singh said he ripped up an agreement and he was going to bring down Justin Trudeau at the first available opportunity, and he never
Yeah.
did.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't trust Jagmeet Singh, and I think he chronically uh, tells lies. I think he can't tell the truth to save his life. I
Mm-hmm.
think he's in trouble with his party, but no, he hasn't said he would entertain a coalition government with the Liberals, or uh, but there's a lot of speculation going on right now in terms of what is potentially possible. Like I was told the other day, it would be very difficult for the Liberals to come back in March and then prorogue again,
Mm-hmm.
because they need to pass a money bill in the House of Commons just to pay for the government to operate.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the same thing we have in the US every year
Yep.
when Congress has to vote for that end of the year money bill, or
Mm-hmm.
else the finances run out and they can't afford to pay people,
Yep.
and the government has no more money. We're hitting that mark at the end of March, the same time the government comes back, which is probably why Trudeau said it would be prorogued until the end of March.
Mm-hmm.
He was probably advised we need to come back in March to have a vote on a money bill, because we're going to run out of money,
Mm-hmm.
and so we need to do that. So there's a lot of obstacles in the way of keeping this government in power.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. I've seen things from this Liberal government that I've never seen from any other Canadian government in the past. So we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
I think every Canadian needs to be vigilant and wary of what is possible, and to not trust the liberals to listen to, as Lincoln liked to say, the better angels of their nature. I don't think the liberals have better angels in their nature. I think they will do whatever they have to do to stay in power, whatever they want to do to
Mm-hmm.
stay in power. And that to me defines the Liberal Party today. And it's interesting, a lot of well, I won't call them ex-liberals, but liberals who served in previous governments, they are the ones saying they don't recognize this party anymore because it doesn't seem to believe in freedom of speech or any kind of basic democracy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think of Dan McTeague, for instance, my friend Dan McTeague, who's he's the Mr. Gas expert today. He's an energy expert, completely against the green energy movement that Trudeau moved. He was a Liberal MP from Scarborough, Ontario, for 20 years.
Yep.
I knew him when he was in the House of Commons. He doesn't recognize his party anymore. He says Justin Trudeau's destroyed the party beyond any recognition. But it's people like Dan McTeague and others who are sometimes the strongest opponents of where this party's going, and not just under Trudeau, but now under potentially Mark Carney.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a few more questions. So if Mark Carney would win the race, like he will automatically be qualified to be the next Prime Minister of Canada, as Trudeau would resign, or he has to win the seat, then he can qualified for to become the Prime Minister.
No, he's prime minister right away. He's prime minister right away.
Okay.
He will not sit in the House of Commons, but it's just like a prime minister can select a cabinet minister who's not sitting in the House of Commons either. A lot of
Wow.
people don't know that. You can, and John Chrétien did that. I'm trying to think of who it was. It was the former premier of Newfoundland. I can't think of his name right now. He did not have a seat in the House of Commons, and yet he occupied a cabinet position. He will be prime minister. He can't sit in the House of Commons, but he can go to cabinet meetings.
Mm-hmm.
He can enter the Parliament buildings just like everybody else can. He can go to caucus meetings. He cannot sit in the House of Commons, but he can do everything else. You remember Jagmeet Singh?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't have a seat for months when he first became leader of the NDP,
Mm-hmm.
but he was there every day, sort of loitering in the lobby
Mm-hmm.
because he couldn't sit in the House of Commons. But that didn't stop him from being the leader of the NDP or an opposition leader, even though he really wasn't. But Mark Carney will be prime minister immediately, and that to me should make a lot of Canadians really upset because this guy is just completely unelected. Any liberal leader is going to be completely unelected. The Canadians had no say in this. This
Mm-hmm.
is an inside job. But no, he will be prime minister.
Mm-hmm.
He'll still need to get a seat to be credible,
Yep.
but I don't think he's got time to get a seat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, maybe we will go in election in April or May. So you spoke with a constitutional lawyer, and you I think he was the same guy. They took Trudeau to court for proroguing the parliament. So what do you take from his words? Like, is there any chances that we would have a verdict before March 24th, and how it would go?
Yeah, it's James Manson from the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. They are representing two folks from Nova Scotia who are taking the government to court over proroguing, taking Trudeau to court, literally over proroguing Parliament. Something the Governor General should never have agreed to. But he's basing the suit. This is a lawsuit saying that in the UK in 2019, Boris Johnson
Yep.
prorogued their parliament for completely specious reasons. They had no good reason to do it. And the Supreme Court in the United Kingdom came back and said, you had no good reason to do that. It was an unauthorized, unconstitutional act. We have to go back immediately. You cannot prorogue. So James Manson was telling me he believes this is a precedent that can be used against Trudeau's prorogation, and he believes it will be effective. And yes, he thinks they could get an answer within 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And if that is effective, I think that's a good thing because we need an election as soon as possible.
Hmm. Yep.
And the liberals can still have their leadership race, even if the House is sitting. Happens all the time.
Yep.
Conservatives had a leadership race when the House was sitting. It didn't upset anything. But you don't need to prorogue the House of Commons or Parliament to have a leadership race, or because you think you're going to lose in a non-confidence vote the next time it comes around. That's not a legitimate reason for having prorogation. So I'm hopeful that this happens. But even if it doesn't, I think we're going to have some sanity by the end of March, and we're going to get new elections.
Yep.
If we don't, I don't know what's going to happen because we haven't even talked about Donald Trump and tariffs. But
Yep.
Donald Trump does not take this government seriously. He takes Danielle Smith, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, seriously. She's going to his inauguration on Monday. Justin Trudeau wasn't even invited.
Yep.
Danielle Smith is going. He takes her seriously. They are negotiating because he knows Danielle Smith represents the people of Alberta, that she has a mandate, a real mandate to be the premier of that province. He knows Justin Trudeau has no mandate to be the prime minister of Canada, that he's lost the confidence, not just of the House of Commons, but of Canadians. And he has no right to pass himself off as the representative of Canada anymore.
Hmm.
So we need a prime minister who is legitimate, a prime minister who's valid, and that's obviously going to be Pierre Poilievre. He's the only one who can take on that mantle of authority right now, who has the the momentum, and who the polls say will be the next prime minister if there's an election held today. So that's where we need to go.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you for bringing up these Trump tariffs. Like I was about to ask, and Daniel Smith was the only premier who did not sign the letter. What was issued by Prime Minister and other premier. So how do you see this step? And Trudeau mocked uh, Alberta premier that it mean we did lot to Alberta when they were in crisis, but now we are in crisis, like Ottawa in crisis, particularly Trump tariff threat. So now Alberta is not supporting us. So how do you analyze this move?
I'm 100% behind Daniel Smith, and I've known Daniel for 20 years. We used to both work at the Calgary Herald. I have a
Hmm.
lot of time for Daniel Smith. I don't always agree with everything she says or does, but generally I do. And I think she's doing exactly what she needs to do. You don't cave on provincial jurisdiction over natural resources because Justin Trudeau says so. This is Justin Trudeau's crisis. This is all about Justin Trudeau creating a crisis at the border. It's Justin Trudeau's problem. He needs to solve it. He's refused to do that. All he's talked about is $1.3 billion of so-called investment in border security, not today or tomorrow or even this year, over 6 years, just like his defense spending is over 10 years.
Years.
You can't take that seriously. That's not spending. That is wishing. That is hoping. It's not spending. It's not doing. And this is the problem.
Hmm.
Justin Trudeau created this crisis. He's not prepared to solve it. Maybe Doug Ford wants to get into bed with Justin Trudeau. He's in Trudeau's pocket. Every time Justin Trudeau needs Doug Ford is there for him. Doug Ford loves Justin Trudeau. Doug Ford loves the Liberal government. And I'll tell you why, Sammy. Nobody's talked about this. It's not just about the auto pact
Hmm.
that Doug Ford is really worried about losing. It's not just about those car plants in Oshawa and Windsor.
Hmm.
It's the fact that Doug Ford knows when there's a federal conservative government, there tends to be a provincial liberal government. That's why he's in Justin Trudeau's pocket. It's about Doug Ford. It's not because Doug Ford loves this country. Doug Ford loves Canada. Doug Ford is in Justin Trudeau's pocket every opportunity, whether it's during COVID,
Yeah.
100% behind Justin Trudeau's authoritarian mandates.
Yep.
Emergencies Act, first premier to get up and salute Doug Ford. Thank God for Justin doing the Emergencies Act, bringing down the heel of the police on these horrible protesters. Conservatives need to remember that. This guy is not on our side.
Yep.
He's not on the side of ordinary Ontarians or ordinary Canadians. He certainly wasn't on the side of the truckers who did the Freedom Convoy or anybody who had to go through the COVID pandemic without getting a haircut or
Hmm.
being allowed to go anywhere except the liquor store and a strip club, which are the only things he kept open. But this guy is not a serious leader. And every time Justin Trudeau needs him, he's there. And I had to laugh. There he is the other day saying, Dominic LeBlanc has a great plan for border security. He didn't even read it. He hasn't even seen it. He says, it's a great plan. Have you seen it, Doug? No, no, I haven't seen it, but it's a great plan. And then he says, have you talked to the new public safety minister? Whatever happened to David McGuinty? This is an MP who sat in the back benches for 20 years. Justin Trudeau suddenly catapults him into the front bench as public safety minister. Doug Ford says, I wouldn't know him if he walked in the room. So, and this is the guy in charge of border security. Doug Ford doesn't know who he is. This is how warped our politics is in Canada.
Hmm.
It is absolutely insane. And we've got Doug Ford still parading around, pretending to be a conservative, and he's not. He
Hmm.
is a capital L liberal. And that's all he's ever been. I have no time for Doug Ford or any of the idiots who surround him and give him this great advice that he keeps taking. Just keep telling Justin Trudeau he's your man. That's the only advice they know how to give Doug Ford. So I have really no time for Doug Ford. I think Daniel Smith is standing strong on a
Hmm.
principle that's very important. And she makes an interesting point. What if we do embargo Alberta oil from the Americans? What if we did that? Well, Ontario and Quebec wouldn't get any oil either
Hmm.
because it's the same pipeline. And if we embargo oil from the United States, we're going to be buying refined gasoline back at twice the price. Now, do you think about this? It's already under the carbon tax. We're paying what, $1.40, $1.50, depending upon where you're living in Canada, a liter. We could be paying $3 a liter for gasoline if we embargo oil to the United States because we
Hmm.
don't have any refining capabilities in Canada. All of our crude is refined in the United States and
Yep.
shipped back to us.
Hmm.
You think they're going to send it back at the same price if we
No.
embargo? No. So this is insanity. And even if Daniel Smith is standing up for the principle of provincial autonomy over natural resources, I agree with her. You don't surrender that because some idiot prime minister has gotten the country into this mess and now says, let's all unify behind me. Let's all unify behind the Liberal Party because it's about Canada versus Donald Trump. This is what Justin Trudeau has wanted from day one, a fight with Donald Trump, a trade war, because that's good for him. That's good for the Liberal Party. That's the only hope they have of getting public support back is saying it's the Liberals versus Donald Trump. And everybody else lines up behind the Liberal Party. Doug Ford, number one, but he's mad that Daniel Smith would not line up behind him because
Hmm.
Daniel Smith said, to hell with you, Justin Trudeau. Alberta will go its own way. Alberta will do what's right. And we're not going to get behind you and your manufactured team Canada.
Hmm.
Polyev has got the right vision here when he says Canada first. Let's deal with the Americans one on one realistically. Let's deal with border security. Let's negotiate as equal partners or as much as we can be with the most powerful nation on the earth next to us. But let's not cave and let's not pretend we're going to get tough with the Americans and we're going to win the trade war. No, we're not. We're going to get demolished. We got to find a rational way out of this. And the sooner Pierre Poilievre can negotiate as prime minister, the better. And until then, Daniel Smith will do the negotiating for us when she's there on Monday at the inauguration.
Hmm. Yeah, and also just as you brought up Doug Ford, I think going to call an election as early as Friday, in February. I was reading today a report like, and also sending checks $200 to I think 1.5 or 3 point, like I think it would cost like $3.5 billion to take spares. I don't recall the exact amount, but this is what's happening. So how do you see Trump inauguration, and when should we expect those tariffs would be implemented on the day one?
Unless there's some intervention between now and Monday, that tariff, that 25% tariff, will be in effect on Monday as soon as he's inaugurated, and I can't see any indication uh, otherwise, because Trudeau has done nothing to indicate he's serious about what Donald Trump's concerns are. That's what he asked, was border security, and Justin Trudeau came back with a completely irrational plan to spend money over 6 years and to pretend there's no problem. Hey, it's not our problem. It's none of these people are coming across the northern border. It's all the southern border. Well, it's the terrorists. There's a lot of terrorists coming across the northern border. Justin Trudeau never talks about that when he talks about the so-called security of our U.S. Canadian border. Now, I see these tariffs, this tariff, and it's one tariff, 25% across the board.
Mhm.
I see that coming into effect on Monday, unless something happens in between now and then. Donald Trump is an interesting human being. I don't know sometimes where he is on issues. He surprises me all the time, whether it's Ukraine or Israel or national security,
Yep.
a lot of different issues. I don't know how much of this is bluster, how much of this is threats to get what he wants in terms of border security. Ultimately, he generally gives an indication 48 hours before a decision is made. So I'm watching his social media very carefully.
Hmm.
But it's ominous. He said absolutely nothing about Canada for over a week now,
Yep.
since he said we're going to use economic force to cause this annexation with
Hmm.
Canada. He said nothing since then. So
Yep.
I find that ominous. And I don't know if anything can happen Monday with any sort of negotiations or any sort of talks. I hope so, because this is not the way to go. Trade wars are horrible. A 25% tariff is going to be bad for both countries. There's no question about that. I'm 100% with Pierre Poilievre on that.
Hmm.
This is not a good thing, and we need to avoid this at any cost. Well, not any cost, but we need to avoid this by rational thinking. And otherwise, this is going to be a mess. And it all means, though, in the end, we need a new government, a
Yep.
credible, legitimate government, and we're not going to have that till we have new elections, and those have to be as soon as possible.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. Like, thank you so much for your time. The words or the thoughts you shared, it seemed like very frustrating. You are speaking on behalf of all Canadians who are sick with the current government and whatever these some premiers are doing, baking like Justin Trudeau in any cause like such as Doug Ford, and let's wait and watch until what would happen on Monday. Then maybe we will have you again next week. And thank you so much, sir, again, and have a wonderful weekend.
Well, you too. There'll be a lot to talk about next Friday, I can tell you. It's going to be
Mm.
a very consequential, huge news week. Every
Yeah,
day is going to be very, very busy.
yeah,
So we'll have a lot to talk about, Sammy.
yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much again.
You're welcome. Talk
Yeah,
to you soon.
yeah. See you. Talk.